He was born in over there in the town of Conewango, which they used to call it Rutledge, so on. And he lived there until he was 17, and then they sent him to England to learn a trade, which he went to, what was the Mason Axletree Factory.
You heard of that?
And I have a picture of that.
Wow.
And then after he came back, he was there like 3 years or so. Then he enlisted with his mother's permission. And it was into the Hardtack Regiment that he went to. Most of these people were from Chautauqua and Cattaraugus and Wyoming County. I have the letters, some of the letters that he wrote home from while he was in the service. After he came home, then before he started farming, he built a cheese factory over to Rutledge. And he ran that. And then after that, a while, he sold that one and built another one in Clear Creek. And then he got rid of that and went to farming. He bought what they call a Parker farm on the Collins Corners Clear Creek Road.
What's a Parker farm? Is that the name of the person who owned it, or? That
was the person that owned it before. So, and that was where we were, you know, born and brought up. And he farmed it there until he retired and moved to a house in Rutledge, or Conewango that is. And where I can remember him, of course, we would, my dad shipped his milk. We had our milk on our old truck. And he'd take it up to Conewango Valley and put it on the train, and then we'd make a circle over to Grandma and Grandpa's place and visit a few minutes and then head home. And of course I can remember going over there to Grandma and Grandpa's a few times, but then I think one of the memories that I have of him was that he would start out to come cross lots to the farm, and he had to come down through the woods and then along the dredge and then up to the farm. But at this one time when he came, he was skinned up here, his elbows and his knuckles, and little blood on his forehead and so forth. I can remember that quite well. But anyway, when he got there, he was pretty well bushed out. My dad loaded him up in the whole truck and took him back home. I can remember pretty much when he died, but I can't, you know, I was only about 5 at the time. Yeah, he was the last surviving veteran in the Randolph area, yeah. The only thing that I can remember was that he had brought home was, for one thing, his old musket. That was in the house there for a while. And another thing, when I went over there, that he brought back from somewhere, of course, was a small box like they put sardines in it with a sliding top. And in that was the nicest winter wheat kernels in there. He'd brought that back for some reason. And then he'd sent back somewhere, he'd sent back to his mother a table, small table that incidentally we still have. It's kind of a nice little old walnut table he had somewhere in Virginia or something, put it on a train and sent it home.
I'll be darned.
So we still have that. He, I think he didn't want to talk too much about the war. He talked more about how things were going on the farm. He wanted to know, he wanted to. He wrote to his sister, which was Mary, and he wrote to her quite often, and she wrote back. But he was quite often it was just be about how things are going on the farm and the haying. And but he did tell about after some of the battles how decimated their numbers were. He, at the time, and I got a reference in one of the books about, he was mentioned as a corporal, and he said our ranks we're lonely now because our ranks are thinned out so bad from being prisoners or killed. He was with Sherman on March to Sea. And one of the things that he wrote about in one of his letters was how they had laid waste to the city of Atlanta. They'd burned it, you know.
Right.
And then they marched up through to Savannah. And he had to, of course, then they marched all the way back to Richmond and so forth on the way home. So they did a lot of course, during in those letters, he told about the mud and the rain and how they had to slog through the mud and the rain and so forth.
Yeah.
But I have, or in the papers is a promotion where he went from corporal to sergeant. So when he mustered out, he was first sergeant. Several times that he wrote that about the write and let me know how Daniel gets along with his haying, and be sure to write as soon as you can. If you hear from England, I wish you would let me know. We had a big 4th here with powder, shot, and railroad iron, and shell on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. Such as one as I do not like to hear very often. I think I have had 4th enough to last me as long as I live. So he said, you will see by this that we have taken the city of Savannah, are now doing provost duty in the city. We were removed by Sherman. He is here in town. This is a nice little city. I think it had been a splendid place in its day. I think we will stay here sometime. The weather is warm and as pleasant as May. So at that time, things were kind of winding down for him. We are now on the old Antietam battlefield and shall move tonight. Please write soon. After the war was over, the older members of the family didn't want to talk about this, especially didn't want to talk about his march with Sherman.
Right.
See, because it was a kind of a shameful thing to do, or they felt that way. But so there was very little talk in the family about his exploits down south there. I, of course, think about him. He was a very loyal. I guess that was one of the things. He was very loyal to, his being in the Army, and he was very military, stood right up straight. Even, I can remember him at the very end. He stood up very straight and tall, and but he was very loyal in his service to the country.